we had one of the most abysmal questions of the night as the second topic. She brings up Hurricane Helene, which is a great issue. People are really suffering to this moment. And so far, the response by this White House has been, I think, shameful. The fact that she was out there partying with Demi Lovato and Sterling K. Brown and having her beef Wellington while people were begging for help on their rooftops, drowning to death with their grandchildren, is an absolute disgrace. That might have been a good question. But no, they raised it and you're thinking, okay, yes, great, here we go. And then came the pivot mid-question, not to Hurricane Helene at all, but to an Al Gore lie about why we're getting bad hurricanes. Look at this.
Let's turn now to Hurricane Helene. The storm could become one of the deadliest on record. More than 160 people are dead and hundreds more are missing. Scientists say climate change makes these hurricanes larger, stronger, and more deadly because of the historic rainfall. Senator Vance, according to CBS News polling, 7 in 10 Americans and more than 60% of Republicans under the age of 45 favor the U.S. taking steps to try and reduce climate change. Senator, what responsibility would the Trump administration have to try and reduce the impact of climate change?
What? Guys, this is so absurd. They do this every time. Every time there's a bad storm, we've got to go to, it's climate change, and the Republicans need to sign the Green New Deal because everything is... We've been having terrible hurricanes for a long, long time. A quick search suggests that this is from Spiked Online and this guy, Andrew Montfort, who writes, if you were to plot a trend over the past 30 years, you would say that if anything, hurricanes are becoming less frequent and less intense. In truth, records of hurricane activity, like all weather and climate data, are highly variable, trending up or down or staying the same for years or decades at a time, then flipping from one regime to another, often without apparent cause. You must be extremely cautious about drawing any conclusions. And by the way, hurricanes are not causing more damage than they used to. And goes on to say that, yes, this hurricane had some 140 mile per hour winds, but there was Kmele in 69 with 150. There was a hurricane in 1935 that had 160, which hit the U.S. before climate change was deemed a major concern. What these leftists do is they use hurricanes and other natural disasters to spread fear and alarm about global warming. And he points out this practice has a long and dishonorable history. Completely agree. But that's what we saw. I mean, did we spend 8 minutes on abortion? Did we spend 8 or 9 minutes on January 6th? And Hurricane Helene and the suffering and the federal response, which has been piss poor so far, doesn't even get a real question. She pops it into a question so she can look like she asked about it, and then she buries it. Thoughts?
We've been doing this question at presidential debates for 25 years now. The big fire in California. What are you going to do about climate change? In fact, I almost want to give them credit for the usual thing to ask the Republican is like, do you believe in climate change? There, instead of the actual.
No, don't give credit. Don't give credit, Matt, because you saw her pop in with a fact check. But I'm just saying you saw her pop in with a so-called fact check that no one asked for. So she comes out to say, I'll be the arbiter on climate change and how it actually is real. Hold on a second. I flagged it. After nobody up there said it wasn't real. Tim Walz is like, Donald Trump called it a hoax. Nobody up there said it was a hoax. And then she pops in later with... oh, God, I can't find it. But she says...
Yeah, I think it was something...
Oh, we have it. Even better. Let's watch her do it.
The overwhelming consensus among scientists is that the Earth's climate is warming at an unprecedented rate. Margaret?
Just want to show you how strong I am and how factual I am in all my own beliefs. Go ahead, Matt.
What are you even doing right there? Two things that I find interesting about that. One is I agree with you. This was I think this is the worst part of the moderation of the debate because it's the second question. And it's also, interestingly, I think maybe the most skilled answer that J.D. Vance gave. And I don't even necessarily agree with all the policy in his answer, but the way that he talked about it, it's like, okay, if you take this seriously of reducing carbon emissions, what would you do? I think we should do this, this, and the other. And it was really, really good. Like we're sitting at home, just like nodding along. Like I'm nodding along with J.D. Vance. I don't want to, but I am because he was doing it kind of correctly. But this is exactly what media has been doing for so long. And part of it is, and I was kind of reflecting on this with Jimmy Carter turning 100 years old. And that seems like a weird thing to bring up at this moment. But if you think about both Carter and Reagan and the way that they approached and thought about and talked about and debated and disagreed about government and the role of the federal government and how that's different than the role of the states, as something both of them, who were both former governors, should know. They thought about this and acted on this constantly, right? They understood that there were some things that the federal government does, and there's some things that the federal government does not. They would sometimes subject an answer to a question based on that test. Is this a proper thing for the federal government to do? Is it not? And sometimes Jimmy Carter, believe it or not, said, no, that's not a proper thing. That was so absent last night, especially among the moderators, which it always is, because moderators and journalists in general, just like they walk around when they see a problem, they see a big do something button and want to mash it. Mm-hmm. And like they want to like yell at you if you're not mashing it as hard as they are. But one of the problems for me last night, that I bemoan as someone who prefers limited and smaller government, is that both candidates, which is true of both tickets, they kind of just took that as given, right? We have a childcare crisis in this country. What are you going to do about it? We have a gun epidemic. What are you going to do about it? We have this and that and the other. And J.D. Vance, part of his sort of amiability was kind of like, yes, well, I agree, and I think we should do something here and there. But it's also a sign of where the Republican Party is right now, which is they do want to outbid or like compete with Democrats for saying, here's what the federal government will do to help you right now in all cases. The question would have been good, and Megyn, you're absolutely right about this, to say, what should the federal government be doing right now with these people in this hurricane? Are there trade-offs that they have made that have been bad trade-offs? Should there have been this? Should there have been that? Trump has made some pretty strong claims. Many of them have been rebutted about the federal response. You know, there's a lot of things to talk about with that. And instead you go to this 25-year-old, we've been talking about it forever, badly and wrongly, kind of gormless question about climate change. And shout out to J.D. Vance for actually answering it pretty well. Here's
his answer. Let's watch it.
Senator, what responsibility would the Trump administration have to try and reduce the impact of climate change? I'll give you 2 minutes.
Sure. So first of all, let's start with the hurricane, because it's an unbelievable, unspeakable human tragedy. I just saw today actually a photograph of 2 grandparents on a roof with a 6-year-old child, and it was the last photograph ever taken of them because the roof collapsed and those innocent people lost their lives. And I'm sure Governor Welch joins me in saying our hearts go out to those innocent people, our prayers go out to them, and we want as robust and aggressive as a federal response as we can get.
Tim Walz is nodding along. Go ahead, Moynihan.
Yeah, I mean, this is deeply frustrating. As Matt said, this has been the same question for 25 years. And, also just to add, watching J.D. Vance and watching him that very quick response, and it gets much better. I mean, that was a pointed response. We shouldn't be surprised by this. Everybody who does this, everybody who should be, in the White House governing our lives, should be good at it. Mm-hmm. We're surprised that somebody's so fluid, but this is his job, and he's exceptionally good at his job. The thing that struck me about this question, Megyn, is that I know very little about the science of climate change. But what I do know is I know politics, and I know that the Pew poll in 2024, as in every year before it, has the 10 issues that concern voters most. What is the last one? The very last one is climate change. That's not to say it's not an important issue. It is the last issue. What do people who are in North Carolina, people who have been affected by this hurricane, what are they saying on social media? If you kind of go out there and listen to people, they're like, these kind of Northeastern, newspapers and media outlets aren't paying attention to us. If this would be a bigger story, if this had hit Brooklyn. And I think that that's true. And there's nothing that kind of underscores the idea of media bias than, this coming up in the debate and you're saying, oh, good, this is coming up. Our concerns are coming up. What is the federal? And then it turns to something about climate change.
Yes.
And you say, oh, yeah, that's them. That's what they do. But one final thing is what Matt said, which is the thing that drove me crazy last night. And this is to knock both of them, is that I come from a different era. I come from different politics. I am obviously, as your listeners know and listeners of Fifth Column know, we're all more libertarian in our economic outlook. And the buddy cop film that we saw last night of them agreeing with each other is because there is no version of the Republican Party that is free market oriented. And as Matt says, it's like, we have to solve childcare. What is your administration going to do? And I'm like, yeah, that's a great idea. We can spend on this. We can spend on this. That agreement was that there's so little daylight between Democratic and Republican economic policy these days that it really bums me out, to be honest.
Yeah. No, today's Republican Party does not share the Reagan, the scariest 9 words in the English language are, I'm from the government and I'm here to help. They do not share that at all.
I don't know.
So yes, you're right. Climate change consistently ranks at the bottom of what viewers or voters care about. And yet there it was up high in the play at the debate. And immigration is consistently 1, 2, 3 at the lowest on what they care about. Hungry Root is one very easy way to eat healthy. They send you fresh, high-quality groceries, simple, delicious recipes, simple, that's key, and essential supplements. It's like having someone else do all the planning and shopping, that's the bad part, so that you don't even have to think about it. Hungry Root gets to know your personal health goals, dietary restrictions, favorite foods, how much time you want to spend cooking, and more. Then they build you a personalized cart for the week, including easy 4-ingredient recipes to put those groceries to use. Each order is fully customizable. They've got fresh produce, high-quality meat, healthy snacks, and more. Everything from Hungry Root follows a simple standard. It must taste good, be quick to make, and contain whole, trusted ingredients. Hungry Root right now offering the Megyn Kelly Show viewers 40% off your first delivery and free veggies for life. Just go to hungryroot.com/Megyn to get 40% off your first delivery and get your free veggies. hungryroot.com/Megyn. Don't forget to use our link so they know we sent you. Thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.